Hello, leaders. Hey, this is Paul Grau, and welcome to Run to Your Leadership Challenges, the daily show that equips leaders and entrepreneurs to achieve their greatest potential. This show is sponsored by Current Leadership Coaching, and they help entrepreneurs excel as leaders so they can create super teams. Find out more about them at currentleadershipcoaching.com. Hey, this week, my wife and I are celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. So, since marriages require tons of effective communication, I'm going to give you our 6 top communication episodes from the past. I hope you enjoy these throwback episodes, and I'll be back next week with brand new episodes. So, here we go. This week, we'll break down 6 different conflict triggers, starting today with a huge trigger that's common in nearly every team, organization, and household for that matter, and that's ineffective communication. Okay, let's get into today's challenge of ineffective communication as the first trigger of conflict. Well, simply defined, ineffective communication is when a message isn't clearly understood by the receiver. The receivers being the people that you want to communicate a message to. You see, all of the most basic forms of every kind of communication always has a sender, that's the one who wants to send a message, and a receiver, or the ones receiving the message. When the receivers understand the message exactly like the sender intended it to be understood, the communication is considered effective. However, this is much easier said than done. We have a tendency to make a simplistic process very complicated at times, if you know what I mean. So, here are several proactive steps for you to avoid and or minimize ineffective communication that causes conflict within your team and organization. The first way communication can trigger conflict is when we are silent. To counter or minimize this trigger, always talk. Communication becomes ineffective and causes conflict very quickly when talking ceases. Interactive conversations are the best way to ensure communication remains effective. With that said, if one person does too much talking, communication can start breaking down as well. So if you are the one communicating the message, be sure to stop periodically and get input from your team members, aka your receivers. Also, any form of talking is communicating, whether it's talking softly or very loudly. And if you're wondering, arguing is a form of talking and communicating, although probably not the most effective form of communicating. The next proactive tip is to ask clarifying questions, as in open-ended questions, on both the receiving end and the sending end. In case you didn't know, open-ended questions are the ones that somebody can't simply reply with a yes or no. It's the question that gets them talking. An example of this may be if you just gave instructions on the first step of some kind of process. You may pause and ask somebody in your team to clarify step 1 in their own words. Get them to repeat it back to you. Okay, moving along. Another trigger can be asking somebody else to pass along your message. In order to be proactive with this trigger, don't rely on other people to pass along your message, especially important messages. Personally deliver the message yourself, unless you absolutely cannot. Now, keep in mind that in today's tech-savvy world, there are tons of ways that you can personally deliver messages. From making videos, to voice messages, to calling them using FaceTime, to live conference video calls, etc., etc. No matter where you are, you can have a face-to-face conversation with people if you have a smartphone and or a computer with internet access. All right, another trigger is making assumptions. To be proactive here, it's simple. Don't assume anything when communicating. Again, this goes for both the sender of the message and the receivers of the message. While communicating, if the sender or receiver starts assuming the others understand everything, communication can quickly turn ineffective. Be sure to explain everything in detail. If you get too detailed, revert back to asking clarifying questions. Bottom line in assuming is don't assume your receivers know. You need to tell them. Finally, the last trigger can be translated messages or putting info into your own words. To be proactive with this trigger, simply stop translating messages that come from above your pay grade. For example, when you receive a message from your boss, don't read it and then translate it into layman's terms to pass it along in your own language. Pass the message along to your team members exactly how you received it. Then go back to step 1, clarifying questions, and talk about it as discussed earlier. Hey, hope you enjoyed that throwback episode. And if you and your team are struggling with communication, we can help you out. We're getting ready to release a free 5-part video training series on how to create and maintain a super team. This free 5-part video series will also give you free access to 3 live training Q&As and 1 or 2 group coaching calls. If you're interested in signing up or just want additional information, please visit currentleadershipcoaching.com/superteamsregistration. And you can also find a direct link in the show notes. Hey, as always, we greatly appreciate you for listening. Have a great rest of your day. And until tomorrow, run to your challenges.